possibly heretics. And then, where does the piper lead the children? To some kind of rocky face, some cave, which accords well with the topography in the upper reaches of the It, or what was earlier the Koppelberg. Interestingly enough, some of the stones and rocks in the upper reaches of this hill or mountain show evidence that they were carved so as to appear as faces, human faces and animal faces, sometimes with an animal, could be a ram, emerging from the mouth of the larger figure, and other smaller faces appearing at various points in the rock. And there is evidence to show that such sites proliferate in Europe, going back to a time just after the glacial retreat when certain populations of that time made their monuments, their memorials to whatever they believed in, one being a face with a blind eye and a seeing eye, where the blind eye indicated an inner vision, one eye looking into the outer world, one looking into the inner soul. And this being the case, one sees why the site would have accumulated such an attraction, or such powers of attraction to those looking back to earlier belief systems. So, I would personally opt for the option that Koppenberg was this local site for various reasons, for reasons I've indicated, but I would invite anyone listening or watching to do their own research. At the end, there will be a bibliography of the sources to which I've referred and other sources, and one can then be part of a very extended and interesting historical debate, but one which also broadens out into a whole discussion of art, the relationship between arts and human condition, social conditions, perhaps even the greatest existential questions that humanity faces, those dealt with by Shakespeare and other great writers, who have not passed over the story of the Pied Piper. Certainly Goethe wrote his version in which he shows that the Pied Piper, first of all, led the rats away to their destruction, led children away to some unspecified spot. So far he accords with tradition, but a third category of person led away by the Pied Piper is that of young girls and women, pointing, I think, to the, I wouldn't say erotic, but what in the wider sense, social, sexual implications of this story that we might relate to certain psychological theories speaking of the libido and its quest for fulfillment in the mother, in the lover. And interestingly enough, at the time of the vernal equinox, the sun rises just over the Itberg east of Hamelin. Could that be some indication of its wide appeal to the human psyche, and with all its interesting psychological and even sexual ramifications? And one more recent version of the story was written by the French poet Apollinaire, and he creates a figure very much like the piper, and the people who follow him are only women, and he leads them away to some place where they altogether vanish. And so we find this story recurring in the most unexpected places. If we read Dylan Thomas's famous poem Fern Hill, time leads the children out of grace in all his tuneful turnings. For me, this is a very, very clear indication of an allusion to the Pied Piper. In fact, it was this poem that got me interested in this theme many years ago. And a number of my friends, I myself even, have tried to render it in our own terms, and perhaps we can go on from here to show how we would transpose and translate this legend into music, poetry, and art generally. Thank you for your interest.